on, let us live our lives.
Laudetur Jesus Christus, Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Wednesday, July the 27th, Pope Francis travels to Quebec on the second leg of his penitential pilgrimage to Canada. We shine the spotlight on some of the protagonists he will engage with in Quebec. And we look back to the feelings and reactions of those present at the papal events in Edmonton. In the Vatican, I'm Linda Bordoni. We go to air as Pope Francis prepares to depart from Edmonton to travel to Quebec City in the west of Canada. It's his third full day on Canadian soil after having arrived in Edmonton on Sunday evening. The Pope has described this apostolic visit as a penitential pilgrimage, a time in which to show closeness to the Indigenous peoples of Canada who have suffered a colonial mindset and actions that attempted to eradicate their culture by educating their children in state-run residential schools that caused much suffering and injustice. In Edmonton, we watched as Pope Francis engaged in a series of events with the Indigenous peoples of Canada, asking forgiveness for evils perpetrated by local church institutions against them and promoting a process of healing and reconciliation. Vatican Radio's Christopher Wells is in Edmonton and was present at those events where he also had the occasion to speak to many of the protagonists. Hello, Christopher. Can you tell us what struck you most?
Hello, Linda. Yes, I'll tell you, this was a very, very moving visit from the Pope for many people. I spoke with a lot of people, a lot of Indigenous people, and universally, every single one of them that I spoke to was either a survivor themselves of the residential school systems or knew people, had family members who were affected by the school systems who had attended the residential schools. There is a great deal of grief, joy, anger, relief at hearing the words of the Pope. It ran the full spectrum of emotions. But everybody was deeply, deeply affected by the experience and the reality of the schools. And I think for everybody that I spoke with, the fact of the Pope coming here, speaking on Indigenous territory to offer an apology was very, very deeply significant, very meaningful for them. Many people emphasized that everybody is going to receive the Holy Father's words differently. So again, some people were very, very moved to tears with relief and joy at what the Holy Father had said. I also heard a lot of people still with a great deal of anger, still with a deep feeling of sadness. And a lot of people were struggling, I think, to process their different emotions. And one thing that I heard over and over again, not only from speakers and spokespersons, but also from ordinary people themselves, was everybody's going to react to the Pope's words differently. Everybody's going to decide for themselves whether they feel that he was sincere, whether they feel the apology was enough. And all of those feelings are valid. All of those reactions are valid because everybody does have a different experience. Now, the people that I spoke with, for the most part, I think everybody I spoke to said they personally felt that the Holy Father was sincere. They were very happy to hear his words. There was also a very strong sense of the need to go forward. There's still a great deal to do to learn the truth of what happened in the residential schools in terms of investigations and historical work, but also spreading knowledge of that experience for the Indigenous people, where the residential schools were implemented with a genuine design to eradicate their culture, their language, their identity as a people, which for them personally meant losing their own personal identity. So
Chris,
a very, very profoundly emotional trip.
And the Indigenous stay as the focus of this trip, although the Pope is traveling east. Can you tell us what to expect in the coming hours in Quebec, briefly?
The Pope is arriving at the airport right about now. He's expected to arrive in the next few moments. He's departing to Quebec City. This has been a curious trip because in Quebec City, he's going to make the formal greeting with the government officials, with representatives of the Indigenous peoples, again, and members of the diplomatic corps. That normally happens at the beginning of the trip. But since it has focused on the Pope's penitential pilgrimage, he met with Native peoples first, Indigenous peoples first. He spoke with them. He gave the apology for the residential schools as the very first act. And now he's picking up with some of the other events that would normally be part of the trip. So that's just one meeting today.
Thank you so much, Chris. In fact, welcome the Pope in the courtyard of the Citadel, the old Quebec, will be the Governor of Canada, Mary May Simon, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Before addressing authorities, the representatives of Indigenous peoples and members of the diplomatic corps, the Pope will pay a courtesy visit to the Governor and then privately with the Canadian Prime Minister. A past president of Inuit Tapirit Kanatami, the national Inuit organization, Ms. Simon is the first Indigenous leader to be appointed to the role of Governor of Canada. Lisa Zengarini tells us more.
After the welcome ceremony in the Citadel of Quebec, the Pope will meet privately with the Governor of Canada, Mary May Simon, in her official residence, while Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will hold talks with the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. Mary May Simon was appointed as the 30th Governor of Canada in July 6, 2021, and is the first ever Indigenous leader in Canada to hold this post. Aged 75, she was born to a local Inuk woman and an English fur trader father. A champion of the rights of Indigenous peoples, in the early 70s, Simon helped negotiate the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement, a landmark deal which in 1975 saw the province acknowledge Cree and Inuit rights in the James Bay region for the first time. A past president of the Inuit Tapirit Kanatami, the national indigenous organization that works to advance Inuit rights, in 2008 she accepted the formal public apology offered by former Prime Minister Stephen Harper to residential school survivors and all Indigenous people in Canada. She has also been the first Inuk to represent Canada as both the ambassador to Denmark and for circumpolar affairs. Before addressing civil authorities, representatives of Indigenous peoples and members of the diplomatic corps, Pope Francis will also have a private encounter with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Son of one of Canada's most notable prime ministers, Trudeau was first elected to the post as leader of the Liberal Party in 2015 and then for a second term in 2019. I am Lisa Zengarini.
Also awaiting the Pope in Quebec City is Pedro Perna from the Foreign Mission Society working in Quebec. As the city prepares for the Holy Father's arrival, he told Vatican News what the sentiments towards his arrival are, as well as what the Pope might expect from the city.
The feeling of Holy Father's arrival is really interesting because in the church, people are interested in that. But the church is a real minority in Quebec. People don't practice faith a lot around here. People don't go to church a lot. If you go to a church in Quebec, you're probably going to see elder people. You're probably going to see people that are not necessarily in the workforce. So there's a big challenge because there's a gap with the who's in church now and who on the representation of society. So I think the Holy Father will find a city that will be open for the dialogue, people that will be interested in what he's about to say, because there's a big issue going on. And this First Nation school boards, this issue on the abuses that were committed, about the cultural abuse that happened by that time, is really a big theme. And people are looking forward to see what's going on that. And I think that can be really meaningful to start a big dialogue, a societal dialogue, and a space to have meaningful exchanges, at first with the First Nations, but with the whole society. It's a new moment for the church in Quebec, because for sure, every time the Holy Father comes, it is a renewal. You know, for us, as being our leader in this earth, and seeing him taking the time to do penitential pilgrimage and to say, well, we're not above anyone, we're just brothers and sisters. That's really meaningful. That's the message of Christ.
And that was Pedro Pern from the Foreign Mission Society in Quebec, speaking there to Sylvain Protz. Looking back to the past intense days in Edmonton, where the Pope uttered his apology to all the Indigenous peoples of Canada, we recall powerful images of survivors of the residential schools and of their family members present at the papal events to listen to his words. Christopher Wells spoke to Carmen about her experience and expectations.
Because it's the apology and the healing that I need. I've worked at it all my life, so stumbled lots, but I always got back up like he tells us to do. Was a good feeling. It was the coming together that showed me through my eyes, that people can come together and recover from this, this lot of tragedy and trauma from all corners, all sides. So, and all I pray for is that we do heal and we do get together and stay together, no more separating, because my elders always told me that. Always walk and be humble, don't be above yourself. There's always somebody higher than you.
Are you excited to see the Pope?
I am very excited. I got goosebumps and I don't know why.
Cree Chief Wilton Littlechild also attended all the papal events in Edmonton. The chief is a lawyer and a residential school survivor, as well as being a pioneer for the global Indigenous rights movement and the first Treaty Indian Member of Parliament. The man, whose Indigenous name translates into walking wolf, told Vatican Radio that the Pope's presence in his homeland is a blessing.
Well, I think it's really a very, very important step from our journey that started years ago till today to put us on a path to reconciliation. So that's the next step after the visit. And the work begins joining each other, working together, walking together towards peace and justice and reconciliation.
How do you see the future for your people?
Well, for the future now, we think about the young people. We think about the young people who want a more hopeful future. And I hope that through reconciliation, they will have that chance to have a hopeful future.
Is reconciliation possible?
Yes, it is. When they asked the young people if they thought that they would see reconciliation and live reconciliation in their lifetime, 70% of the youth said yes. Reconciliation will happen in our lifetime.
What about the Pope's visit?
Visit with the Pope was just a blessing, a real blessing, especially to come to my home territory, which I did not expect, but was really honored that he would be there. And his words were healing words for all of us.
Cree Chief Wilton Littlechild there. And that's all for this edition of Vatican and World News. Join us tomorrow.
The church is in Africa at the service of reconciliation, peace and justice. The church is in Africa at the service of reconciliation, peace and justice.
This is the Africa service of Vatican Radio.
Welcome to our half-hour daily program for Africa.
In today's program, you can hear our feature Health and Healing. First, however, our bulletin of church news, followed by African News Panorama. I am Festus Tarawali. Pope Francis on Wednesday, the third full day of his penitential pilgrimage to Canada, was scheduled to travel by airplane from the city of Edmonton to Quebec, arriving at the city's international airport at around 3 p.m. local time, which is 9 p.m. in Rome. He will be officially welcomed at the residence of the Governor-General of Canada at the Citadel de Quebec. His other engagements for the day include a meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, to be followed by a meeting with civil authorities, representatives of indigenous peoples, and members of the diplomatic corps. Lisa Zengarini reports.
After the welcome ceremony in the Citadel de Quebec, the Pope will meet privately with the Governor of Canada, Mary May Simon, in her official residence, while Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will hold talks with the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. Mary May Simon was appointed as the 30th Governor of Canada in July 6, 2021, and is the first ever Indigenous leader in Canada to hold this post. Aged 75, she was born to a local Inuk woman and an English fur trader father. A champion of the rights of Indigenous peoples, in the early 70s Simon helped negotiate the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement, a landmark deal which in 1975 saw the province acknowledge Cree and Inuit rights in the James Bay region for the first time. A past president of the Inuit Tapirit Kanatami, the national indigenous organization that works to advance Inuit rights, in 2008 she accepted the formal public apology offered by former Prime Minister Stephen Harper to residential school survivors and all indigenous people in Canada. She has also been the first Inuk to represent Canada as both the ambassador to Denmark and for circumpolar affairs. Before addressing civil authorities, representatives of indigenous peoples and members of the diplomatic corps, Pope Francis will also have a private encounter with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Son of one of Canada's most notable prime ministers, Trudeau was first elected to the post as leader of the Liberal Party in 2015 and then for a second term in 2019. I am Lisa Zengarini.
On Tuesday, during a pilgrimage to Lake St. Anne in Alberta, Pope Francis prayed for healing from what he described as the terrible effects of colonization. The liturgy of the word at the lake was one of the spiritual highlights of the Pope's 6-day visit to Canada, his 37th apostolic journey abroad. After blessing the water of the lake and the faithful present, the Holy Father began his homily, noting that the beating of drums introducing the celebration seems to echo the beating of the hearts of the many pilgrims who for generations have walked together to reach this lake of God, seeking healing from its waters. He went on to remark that silently contemplating these waters, where the material heartbeat of the earth can be sensed, inspires us to return to the sources of life and of our faith. Indeed, said Pope Francis, it allows us in spirit to visit the holy places, to imagine Jesus who carried out much of his ministry on the shores of a lake, the Sea of Galilee. Focusing on the readings of the liturgy drawn from the book of Ezekiel, Pope Francis reiterated the crucial role of grandmothers, especially in indigenous communities, in transmitting the living water of faith. Faith rarely comes from reading a book alone in a corner, said the Pope. Instead, it spreads within families, transmitted in the language of mothers, in the sweetly lyrical accents of grandmothers. While thanking them for their precious role, the Pope reiterated his call on families to cherish and take care of their elders. He then went on to focus on the healing power of water in the context of the injuries suffered by the indigenous peoples of Canada after the European colonization. Recalling Jesus' ministry on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, he implored the Lord through the intercession of Mary and of St. Anne to help heal those deep wounds. The Pope then remarked that today all the Church needs healing, inviting the pilgrims to contribute to the building up of a mother Church capable of embracing each of her sons and daughters, that is, open to all and speaks to everyone and encounters everyone. He further emphasized that if we want to care for and heal the life of our communities, we need to start with the poor and the most marginalized, including the elderly, who risk dying alone, but also young people who are more interrogated than listened to, pointing out that Jesus calls us to go out, to give, to love. He invited all the faithful to ask themselves what they can do for those in need, and especially for the indigenous peoples who have endured so much suffering. In conclusion, Pope Francis expressed hope that the Church may advance, helping the healing process of the indigenous peoples of Canada, and reiterated how precious they are to him and the Church. On the first full day of his penitential pilgrimage to Canada on Monday, Pope Francis apologized and expressed his deep sorrow and remorse for the sufferings inflicted on the indigenous peoples of Canada, particularly for the forced assimilation they endured in the residential school system. The 19th Plenary Assembly of the Symposium of Episcopal Conferences of Africa and Madagascar, SECAM, entered its third day on Wednesday in Ghana's capital, Accra. The meeting of the grouping of all the bishops' conferences of Africa and its islands is taking place under the theme Ownership of SECAM, Security and Migration in Africa and its Islands. In his homily during the opening mass of the plenary, the pro-prefect of the section for evangelization of the Dicastery for Evangelization, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, called for a new commitment to evangelization on the continent. He also urged the bishops to reflect on their relationship with God and embrace Jesus' authority of love. Meanwhile, in remarks at the official opening ceremony on Tuesday, in the presence of Ghana's President, Nana Akufo-Addo, Cardinal Tagle said the ecclesial and pastoral communion generated within the continent of Africa and its islands through SECAM contributes to security on the continent. The Cardinal was commenting on the theme of the plenary, which, as you heard earlier, is Ownership of SECAM, Security and Migration in Africa and its Islands, a theme he said is rich and provocative. After offering Pope Francis's warm greetings to the participants, Cardinal Tagle presented two thoughts on the theme. Firstly, he said, SECAM, like other ecclesial and pastoral bodies on the diocesan, national, continental, and universal levels, is a sign and instrument of communion. Communion, while a gift, is also a human task and responsibility, he noted. Each one benefits from communion. A SECAM owned and supported by all members will serve and strengthen all members, he said. Secondly, continued the Cardinal, the ecclesial and pastoral communion generated within the continent of Africa and its islands through SECAM contributes to security on the continent. However, he said it is sad to note that security is often militarized and ideologized. Continuing, Cardinal Tagle said lasting security is attained when we treat each other as brothers and sisters, when we share their joys and pains, when we value and protect each other's dignity, when each one has access to the goods of the earth and the basic needs for human growth, when migrants and refugees forced to leave their homes due to poverty, violence, and environmental disasters are welcomed, protected, and integrated into our communities. This is communion. This is true security, he said. In conclusion, he prayed that SECAM may be a sign and instrument of communion that promotes authentic and lasting security. You are tuned to the Africa service of Vatican Radio.
African News Panorama.
Reports from Africa say protests against the rising cost of living are taking place in many countries. Some are organized by students and others by civil servants and opposition politicians. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the prices of food and fuel have steadily risen. Ukraine and Russia are big exporters of wheat and other cereals to African and Asian countries. Since the beginning of the Russian invasion, the exports have been halted. Protests against the high cost of living by university students erupted on Wednesday in the Liberian capital, Monrovia. The protest was disrupted by supporters of the ruling party, the Congress for Democratic Change, who beat up the demonstrators, injuring many. According to local media, the supporters of the ruling party, who called themselves the Council of Patriots, said they attacked the protesters because they had portrayed the government of President George Weah as not performing well. The president of France, Emmanuel Macron, has strongly criticized the African presidents for their indifference to Ukraine following the Russian invasion. Mr. Macron was speaking on Wednesday at a conference in the Cameroonian capital, Yaoundé. He referred to some African leaders as hypocrites, especially for denying that the Ukraine conflict was a war. The criticism comes at a time when Russia's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, is winding up his tour of some African countries where he has been trying to strengthen diplomatic ties. In March this year, 17 African countries abstained in a United Nations vote to condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Reports from Somalia say 9 people, including a district commissioner and his security guards, were killed on Wednesday in a suicide attack in the coastal town of Malka, the regional capital of Lower Shebele. The Al-Shabaab Islamic militants claimed responsibility. Mark Town is situated 90 kilometers south of the capital, Mogadishu. Reports from Zimbabwe say civil servants began a 2-day strike on Wednesday to demand an increase in their salaries, which they say should also be paid in US dollars rather than the local currency, which has lost value. The government announced last month that it would double the salaries this month, but the workers' unions said the increase has been eroded by a high inflation, which stands at 190%. Reports from the country say schools, health facilities, and government services were seriously affected on Wednesday by the strike. The unions have warned that they could go on a longer strike in September if their demands are not met. Reports from Zambia say the former First Lady Esther Lungu was questioned by police on Tuesday over the buildings she owns in the capital, Lusaka. According to local media, 15 flats belonging to her were confiscated by the Anti-Corruption State Agency this month on suspicion that they are proceeds of crime. The Anti-Corruption Agency has been investigating the former First Lady since March this year. President Hakainde Hichilema, who came into power in August last year, has vowed to recover all looted resources by former government officials. Reports from Mozambique say a man and his brother have been arrested by police after it was discovered that he wanted to sell 2 of his albino children. Police said on Wednesday that they had also arrested the buyers after a tip from locals in the province of Tete. According to police, the children are aged 9 and 16. Their father was selling them at $39,000 US. Albino people have been killed in Mozambique for their body parts, which are used for ritual purposes. You are tuned to the English Africa service of Vatican Radio. And now, our feature, Health and Healing. Last Saturday, July 23rd, the World Health Organization, the WHO, declared the monkeypox outbreak a global health emergency after 16,000 cases were detected in 75 countries. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus is the Director General of the World Health Organization.
The global monkeypox outbreak represents a public health emergency of international concern. I have made a set of recommendations for 4 groups of countries. First, those that have not yet reported a case of monkeypox or have not reported a case for more than 21 days. Second, those with recently imported cases of monkeypox and that are experiencing human-to-human transmission. This includes recommendations to implement a coordinated response to stop transmission and protect vulnerable groups, to engage and protect affected communities, to intensify surveillance and public health measures, to strengthen clinical management and infection prevention and control in hospitals and clinics, to accelerate research into the use of vaccines, therapeutics, and other tools, and recommendations on international travel. The third group of countries is those with transmission of monkeypox between animals and humans. And the fourth is countries with manufacturing capacity for diagnostics, vaccines, and therapeutics.
Monkeypox is caused by a virus. The virus was first identified in 1938 when an outbreak took place in some animals. It was found in several monkeys, and from then the disease took the name monkeypox, although up to now it is not clear which animal is actually the source of the virus. The first human cases were reported in 1970 in West and Central Africa. The second outbreak in humans took place in the United States of America in 2003. Cases in the United States of America were found among humans who had had contact with infected dogs and rats that had been imported from Ghana. Monkeypox generally spreads to people from infected wild animals such as primates and rodents. Human-to-human transmission also occurs. The infection develops after close contact with the infected persons, for example, through exposure to a broken skin, mucous membrane, respiratory droplets, infected body fluids, and contaminated objects of infected people. The first symptoms of monkeypox appear between 7 to 14 days after the infection. These include fever, fatigue, headache, and general weakness of the body. The symptoms are usually followed by the swelling of the lymph nodes. Then appears a widespread rash on the face and the other parts of the body, which can also be felt inside the mouth, on the palms of the hands, and the soles of the feet. Patients also develop poxes or pimples, which are filled with fluid and which can burst into sores. Reports from Africa say some cases of monkeypox have been detected in some countries. Dr. Mashidiso Moweti is the World Health Organization's Regional Director for Africa.
In Africa, monkeypox cases have been previously reported in 6 countries. There have been 36 confirmed cases in Nigeria, 10 in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 8 in the Central African Republic, 3 each in Benin and Cameroon, and 2 in the Republic of the Congo. Ghana and Morocco, which have not previously recorded cases of monkeypox, now have 5 and 1 confirmed cases, respectively. Ethiopia, Guinea, Liberia, Mozambique, Sierra Leone, Sudan, and Uganda, all countries with no previous incidents, have also reported suspected cases. This is an unusual situation. So soon after the inequities Africa experienced in respect to the COVID-19 response, we cannot afford any potential repeat and need to be adequately prepared. As WHO in Africa, we're already ramping up support to countries to urgently increase testing capacity for monkeypox, and we're in the process of procuring thousands of tests for the continent. As far as the vaccine is concerned, one of the newer and safer smallpox vaccines has been approved for the prevention of monkeypox. Although we're certainly not recommending mass vaccination at this stage, we must ensure that we are ready should the need arise. Global stocks are extremely limited at this stage, but we're working closely with member states and partners on a coordination mechanism to ensure fair access to both vaccines and treatment.
Dr. Mashidiso Moweti, the World Health Organization's Regional Director for Africa. Since the beginning of this year, the outbreak of monkeypox has also taken place in parts of the world that have never experienced it before, for example, in European countries. In these countries, the disease has struck mainly gay men. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, again.
For the moment, this is an outbreak that's concentrated among men who have sex with men, especially those with multiple sexual partners. That means that this is an outbreak that can be stopped with the right strategies in the right groups. It's therefore essential that all countries work closely with communities of men who have sex with men to design and deliver effective information and services and to adapt measures that protect the health, human rights, and dignity of affected communities. With the tools we have right now, we can stop transmission and bring this outbreak under control.
The listener should note that although monkeypox is not a sexually transmitted disease, intimate contact is one of the ways by which it is spread. Research shows that the current outbreak is mainly among people below 50 years of age. Dr. Sanjay Gupta is a specialist in neurosurgery.
People infected with the virus need to isolate until all their rash and lesions have healed, new skin is formed, and they've consulted with public health authorities. There is no proven safe treatment for monkeypox, but the symptoms can be managed with existing medications. Like the coronavirus, monkeypox is another zoonotic virus. That means it jumped from animals to humans.
Dr. Andy Seal is an official of the World Health Organization. He says the concentration of the infection among people varies from one part of the world to another.
We're seeing nearly 70 countries affected by this outbreak. In previously affected countries, which are largely in West Africa, we're seeing communities of diverse backgrounds and ages. And in newly affected countries, we're seeing cases that are largely focused on men. And when we look at those cases, we're noticing that actually it's men who have sex with men, so men who identify as gay, bisexual, or who have sex with other men, who have perhaps reported through sexual health clinics. There have been some cases reported in women and children, but these have been very limited. But remember, anyone can get infected if they're in contact with the virus. And so for the moment, while we're concentrating our efforts on gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men, we are also keeping a strong eye on the data to see whether the outbreak will evolve into other communities.
Dr. Seal explains why the monkeypox outbreak in non-endemic countries is among gay men.
There are multiple modes of transmission for monkeypox, including skin-to-skin contact, kissing, or touching infected materials like bed linen. What we know and what the evidence tells us is that sexual networks within communities of gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men have played a role in transmitting the virus in the context of this outbreak. So some gay and bisexual men are connected to these dynamic sexual networks that connect cities and countries. And in the early days of the outbreak, international travel seemed to play a significant role in further amplification of this outbreak.
One of the challenges in fighting monkeypox is stigma and discrimination of patients. Stigma refers to lack of respect or a negative opinion for a person by most people in society because that person has done something that society does not approve of.
Stigma essentially stops people from accessing services. It helps no one. So we need to really be robust in addressing and identifying stigma and discrimination when we understand that it's happening. Having monkeypox can be distressing, and people need support. We mustn't blame or stigmatize anybody for either being exposed to monkeypox, perhaps they've been identified through contact tracing, or indeed for having the virus itself. We need to provide support to people who are in this situation. Hopefully for most, it'll be a short-lived, mild infection, but we know for some people it can be very painful and they may require hospital care. There are practical things that we can do, not only to fight the stigma, but also to offer practical support, including with shopping, if they're isolating, for example, and offering people a friendly shoulder if they need to talk about their experiences. There's a lot of misinformation about monkeypox, much of it fueled by homophobia and racism. We have to challenge this. We must work more closely with the communities affected, inspired by their leadership, their advocacy around access to testing, to vaccines, and to services in general. Fighting stigma and getting response right come hand in hand, and it's through partnership with communities.
Dr. Andy Seal, an official of the World Health Organization. And that was Health and Healing for this week. This has been Johnny Baptist Tumusime.
You're tuned to the Africa service of Vatican Radio. In our next program at the same time tomorrow, you can hear our feature Culture and Society and News for Young People. I am Festus Tarawali, and do join us then. Praised be Jesus Christ. Laudetur Jesus Christus.
Jesus, in your life you will smile.